I have been ready for the past at least 15 minutes. So here, there was a question here. Why is it, what is the point, the Mishnah says in Masechet Kiddushin, Ha'isha niknet b'shalosh drachim. The woman is acquired, from the word kinyan, acquisition, by three ways. Bekesef, bishtar, ubevi'ah. Money is one way. How to marry a wife, to marry a girl. Shtar, a document. They used to have, sometimes they didn't give a wedding ring, they gave a document, a shtar, a contract. This is one extraction, this is one way how the ketubah is one extraction of this shtar. Today we all go by kesef, which means either a wedding ring or, like some Sephardic communities, they use, as I said, the Syrian community uses the silver coin. And the third way is called bi'ah. The third way does not exist anymore. In the past 1700 years, that's we find in the Gemara, in Masechet Kiddushin, in Masechet Ketubot, and other places as well, that Rav, the famous great Torah scholar of Babel, of Babylonia, Rav cursed anyone who marries with bi'ah. I will explain what is bi'ah. Bi'ah means with the sexual intercourse. And yet this was the best way how to acquire a wife from biblical time through the early times of the Talmud. People married how? By performing the act, physical act with his wife, with the bride, and that's how they became married. Before the Torah was given, if you remember the story of Yehuda and Tamar, remember Yehuda, one of the great tribes, the great one, the son of Yaakov, he went out, he had 2 children, and he gave them wives, and somehow those 2 children did not behave correctly, and instead of bringing children, they were wasting their seed, and that's the reason why they were punished by God, and they died. Everybody knows this story from the book of Bereshit, in the region of Parashat Vayeshev, Vayera, Toldot, and so forth. And then one of them was Tamar. Tamar was given to one of his sons, and her husband died. And what happens when the husband dies without children? If he has a brother, today, if he has a brother, the brother takes her as a wife. For the case of Yibbum. Today we don't do this no more. We don't trust people that they do something l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. The world has become lustier and lustier. So therefore the sages abolished the Yibbum, which means to make your sister-in-law become your wife. That kind of sister-in-law which became widowed to someone who left her without children. If he has a brother, so he takes her. Today what we do is chalitza. There is even a movie about chalitza. What is chalitza? That we don't trust them to do anymore this act, the proper way. So therefore they don't do it no more. What we do is that in case a woman who has been married to someone who died and left her without children, and he has a brother, instead of taking her to be his wife, he gives her a chalitza. She removes the shoe and she throws it at him according to a certain procedure that is performed by the Beit Din, and automatically she is free to marry anybody.
A shoe?
A shoe, yes. And she says to him, "Kacha ye'aseh la'ish asher lo yivneh et bet achiv." This is the way that should happen to somebody who doesn't want to build up the house of his brother. This, by the way, if you don't know about it, so forget about it now, because it's a big subject. The subject of chalitza, today we do it every day. There is such a thing in Bet Din, whenever you have a case like this. But I thought you would know about Yibbum. Yibbum. Who doesn't know what is Yibbum and chalitza? But that at least gives you a window into what I said, that there was time when they married just by having a sexual act, sexual intercourse. That's called bi'ah. And that's how they became married. Tamar, for example, officially, before the Torah was given, as it says in the Torah, she became the wife of Yehuda. I mean, in the beginning, you know the story of Tamar. She was standing in a corner, dressed like a prostitute, and waiting for Yehuda to come. And Yehuda is her own father-in-law. In those times, a father-in-law could do that thing which only a brother can do today. She waited for him to come, and then when he saw her, it's a very, very complicated issue to explain, especially that when we do not dedicate enough time for it, some people have the question, what? This is our ancestor Yehuda? He goes with a prostitute? Chas v'shalom, God forgive. God, you should know that the story is much, much deeper than that. I mean, what about Tamar? Tamar is considered one of our righteous women. And she dressed like a prostitute, and then she went with her own father-in-law, and she became pregnant. And he thought that he had to do only with a prostitute. Later on, when they found out that Tamar is pregnant, Yehuda himself proclaimed the sentence. He said, what? Tamar is pregnant? That means she was with someone, therefore she should die. And he proclaimed the verdict that she should be burned. And that's when she revealed, not by saying it openly, but she revealed she gave the staff that he left in her hands, and he says, would you please tell Yehuda that the guy who gave me those achotemet ve'apetilim, that's the guy. When Yehuda saw the staff and the fringes in his hands, that's when he finally realized that he is the one who was with her. And of course the execution stopped and everything. It's a very, very deep story. It's not something that we can discuss now. I just want you to know what is the point of Tamar. Why did she want to go with an old man? A beautiful woman like this. As I told you last time, every one of the patriarchs and every member of this great family, they wanted to have a share in the building of the future nation of God. That's the reason, that's the real secret behind the story of Rachel and Leah fighting together who is going to have Yaakov for that night. It's not that we are not, the Torah does not deal with the lofty stories and things that have nothing to do with seichel, with logic. It has to do with telling us that how much they desired to be a branch from that nation which is about to be born. Anyway, why did I introduce this? Because I wanted you to understand that there is such a thing as acquiring a wife with a bi'ah, just by having a sexual intercourse, by being with her. That's called bi'ah, coming into her. And then she becomes his wife. Today, as I told you, in the Gemara it says that Rav issued a decision agreed upon by all the rabbis, that this way, this manner, how to acquire a wife must stop. So the Jewish people did not do anymore a wedding by having a sexual intercourse and that's it for the past 1700 years. Rav cursed anyone who would do that. Why is that? Because he says, finished. The old time they had, everything that they did was for the intention of doing a good deed of mitzvah. But today, if you tell the people, go with your sister-in-law, or this is already something that is not anymore according to the kavod of the spirit of people. People do not tolerate this logically. And therefore, the minhag of giving a wedding ring or a piece of silver became developed. So we have today only Aisha niknet bekesef ubishtar, either with a document or with either with a contract or with a ring or a coin. Let's go back to the question, why is it that women cannot marry more than one? Philosophically, what is the difference between a man and a woman? If we want to use philosophical concepts, here is the difference. The man is a giver, the woman is a receiver. She takes in, he gives out. We asked, why is it that the man can take several wives in those times when it was possible? Today you cannot, because there is a law against it, the law of bigamy. That's against it. You cannot take more than one. But by the Ashkenazim, it's already more than 1,000 years that Jews could not marry more than one wife. And that was a decree that was issued by whom? By Rabbi Gershom Meor Hagola, the light of the diaspora. 1,000 years ago. That happened in Europe when he issued a verdict that no more taking more than one wife is allowed. Nevertheless, the Ashkenazim, of course, since he was the greatest man at that time for Ashkenazic Jewry, the Ashkenazi adopted his decision. The Sfaradim did not. 1,000 years ago, it was not like today. I must tell you that today, the Ashkenazim are superior in Torah. Their greatness in Torah, in the last 500 years or so, is evident. Their rabbis and their Torah scholars are much stronger. Their method is greater. The Sephardim went down a little. Today we are recatching ourselves, so to speak. Today the Sephardism is being in a full renaissance, which means we are waking up, and now we have many yeshivot also, and we have a lot of Torah scholars to be proud of. But still, the superiority is in the hands of the Ashkenazim. But you have to understand that 1,000 years ago, for at least 700 or 800 years, the Sephardim were the greatest Torah scholars in all the world. Today when we study a piece of Gemara, a real Rosh Yeshiva, a head of the Yeshiva, cannot give a lecture without mentioning Rambam, right? Maimonides, Sephardic luminary. He cannot give a lecture without mentioning Haritba, Harashba, Haran. These are acronyms. Haran, for example, is Rabbeinu Nisim. All these were Sephardim. In the Golden Age, for example, up to 1492, when the Jews were expelled from Spain by the government of Ferdinand and Isabella, after the persecutions with the Inquisition and so forth, then the Sephardim went elsewhere in the world. Some went to Turkey, some went to Morocco, some went to Europe. But up to 1492, the Torah was in the hands of the Sephardim. They were the greatest. Very few were among the Ashkenazim who could compete with the greatness of the Sephardim of the Golden Age. It's called the Golden Age of Spain. Beginning with Rabbi Yehuda HaLevi, the great poet, Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabirol, Harambam, Harif, Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, The first codifier of Jewish law is Rabbi Yitzchak Al-Fasi, that we find in every Gemara in the second section. And then you have Rambam, Maimonides. And then you have Rashba, Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet, and a whole list of great Torah luminaries, which today we cannot live without them. All of them were Sephardim. All we can quote by the Ashkenazim was Rashi, a famous genius who lived approximately 1,000 years ago in France and illuminated the world with his Torah. He was Ashkenazi, even though he did follow most of the traditions of the Sephardim, as we can find through his teachings. But that's Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, Ashkenazi. But we have, of course, Rabbi Gershom Meor HaGolah, the one that I cited before, the one who gave his decision that no more should we be allowed to marry more than one wife. That was 1,000 years ago. But as I said, the Sephardim did not agree, did not accept. Why, would you ask? Why didn't they accept? Well, number one, you have to understand that when someone knows that the Torah, that he is in control of the Torah, can you tell him what to do? At that time of Rabbeinu Gershom, the Torah was in the hands of the Sephardim. I mean, the Sephardim were the real glory of Judaism all over the world. And here comes a great man from the Ashkenazim, and he tells us not to marry more than one wife. They did not accept. And that's the reason why you go down into the Rambam, about 900 years ago, and you find that he tells you openly, without mentioning at all Rabbi Gershom Meor HaGolah, he says that if you want to marry up to 4 wives, you are allowed if you have the means. And then go down 500 years further, go into the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, our Bet Yosef, Maran, and he writes down exactly the conditions that you could take for up to 4 wives. So having more than one wife was always possible for Sephardim. Today, as I said, it's impossible because it's against the laws of the world. The world, by the way, in Morocco and I'm sure in other Yemen and other places, I can tell you, for example, a very, very good example. The late chief rabbi of Haifa, Rav Yosef Messas, who came from the city where I was born, in Morocco, in Meknes. And he was a luminary by himself. He wrote more than 50 books. See, looking at him, it's like you look at the face of the angel. And he had 2 wives. It was a special story by itself. Why? The first wife did not give him any children, and he was in love with her. We remember her till the end of his life. He was about 88 years old when he died, and he never left his first wife. But everybody knew that he took a second wife, and she is the one who gave him 1 son. And this son is the vice mayor of Haifa, by the way. It is an example of a rabbi who took 2 wives. But in order to be able to do this today, if the law allows you, is only, sometimes, let me give you an example. Sometimes a person marries his wife, and then she becomes sick. Let's say, in case, and now we cannot even give her a divorce, because when you give a divorce to someone, it has to be with sane mind, which means both of them understand. If one of them does not understand, you cannot give a divorce. So what can he do now, the poor guy? He's going to stay with a wife who is not normal. She is in a mental institution, and you cannot give her a divorce because she does not understand. And divorce, the condition of the divorce is only when they understand fully. In that case, there is a special rule in the Shulchan Aruch that if you obtain 100 signatures, heter me'ah rabbanim, by 100 rabbis, you are allowed to take a second wife, while retaining the first one. Otherwise, according to the Shulchan Aruch Even HaEzer, if you have a wife and you don't have any children, you are allowed to divorce after 10 years. Everybody knows that. After 10 years, if there are no children. Yeah. But some exceptional cases when the husband cannot separate from his wife, like the case of Rav Yosef Messas, then he was able to get 100 signatures from 100 Rabbanim that gave him the permission to take another wife. with certain conditions. It's not easy today in modern times. It's not easy at all. And well, among the religious communities, this could happen, that a person has to divorce because his wife did not give him, after 10 years of marriage, no children. Allow me, Malkiel, just to tell you a little story that is brought in the Midrash relating to this. There was a couple, 10 years, religious couples, they loved each other very much, but they didn't have children. In accordance with the law, after 10 years you have to divorce. Unless if you do the Termei Rabbanim, as we said, which is usually very difficult to do. At the time, the rabbi was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the famous saint who wrote the Zohar HaKadosh and the Kabbalah, 2,000 years ago. They went to him, Rabbi, we decided to divorce, we have no children, we decided to divorce. So please, can you arrange for us the divorce? He said to them, I ask you just one thing. I see that you love each other. It makes me feel terrible that I have to give you a divorce. You know, our sages said that when a man divorces his wife, even God himself cries. The Mizbeach, the altar, has tears. God doesn't like divorces. Sometimes it is necessary. You cannot escape doing it. What can you do? Anyway, they went to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and they said to him. So he said to them, I'll do it, but on condition. I want you, he said to them, as you have married with love, I want you to separate with love. When you married, you made a sauda, right? You organized a party. I want you to do the same thing in divorce. Like you did a nice party for your wedding, I want you to do a party, a sauda, a meal for your separation, for your divorce. They said, okay, no problem. When the woman was very clever and she loved her husband. So when they went back home, she prepared, she organized a nice party. All this is written in the Midrash. And she gave her husband a lot of wine to drink. And he kept drinking and drinking and drinking. Both of them, they love each other. There is nothing. Only they have to go by the law. They have no children. They have to leave. They have to divorce after 10 years. When he was asleep completely, she gave an order to her slave, to her servants, pick up my husband and take him. Before he slept, he told his wife, my wife, you know how much I'm sorry that we have to divorce. But you know that I loved you always. But at least do me a favor. I want you to take the most precious item from our home and you take it. Make it yours. He said, Ahlan wa sahlan, I will. She gave him wine and he drank till he was asleep completely. She gave an order to her servants, pick him up and take him to my father's house. They took him to her father's house. When in the next day he woke up and he says, what am I doing here? She said, hey, you gave me permission. You told me that I should pick up the most precious item in the house. The most precious one is you for me. So therefore, I took you. Then they realized that they cannot separate. It's impossible. Their love is binding them to such a degree that they cannot. They went back to the rabbi. And Rabbi Shimon welcomed them, this time with a large smile. Sit down. I don't want you to divorce. But 10 years without children. I am praying to Hashem today, because of the love that you have expressed towards each other, that may Hashem give you a Ben Zachar this year. And he said, go home. A month later she was pregnant, and Baruch Hashem, they didn't have to divorce. Why did I tell you this story after I was telling you, all these laws and things? Because there is always a possibility depending on the situation at home. If the home was a home of love and affection, miracles could happen. Miracles. And you don't even have to go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai 2,000 years ago. Even today, similar stories happen every day. But, unfortunately, when people lose interest in each other, so after 10 years, that the main reason why we marry is procreation. As the Torah says, Peru Urvu. That's the first commandment in the Torah. So I was telling you before, the difference between the woman and the man. The woman is a taker, a receiver. The woman is a giver. The man is a giver. What is the difference? To explain to you the difference, I have to take you with me to that situation when, you know what happens when somebody goes with a married woman. If he goes with a married woman, then not only that the child is going to be a mamzer if they have a child from that forbidden union, but at the same time, she cannot go back to her husband. Asura la ba'al ve la bo'el. She is forbidden to go back to her husband, and she is forbidden to marry the guy with whom she sinned. What about the man himself who sinned with her? He can marry anyone. Sounds terrible. By the way, both of them, by the punishment of God, the punishment is karet, chaz v'shalom. Karet is a spiritual extermination. And somebody goes with a married woman. Both of them will be punished equally. But now we are talking about this world. In this world, she cannot go back to her husband, which means the husband must issue a divorce. But he can marry somebody else when she cannot marry the one with whom she sinned. It does not sound fair. Why? At least he should be also punished not to be able to do whatever. To go back to his wife. He's allowed to go back to his wife. That's the problem. She is not allowed to go back to her husband. But he is allowed to go back to his wife. I don't know what kind of wife will accept him anymore, but if she wants, he can go back to his wife. But she cannot go back to her husband, even if the husband loves her and he wants to hide the situation. He cannot. She's forbidden la ba'al ve la bo'el, to the husband as well as to the guy who sinned with her. The question is why? We go back again to the theory that we exposed here. The husband is a giver. The woman is a receiver. That's how God created us. She takes in. He gives out. When you give out, let's say to a forbidden source, like a married woman, in heaven you get punished just the same. They will punish you, and how? But it did not affect your system, because you took it out into the other person. But you yourself, you stay unscathed, which means you are not affected by the situation, except spiritually, of course. But physically, you are not affected at all, because what you had in, you gave it to her. But she received it in. She took the forbidden seed into her. She has become affected. And that's why she cannot go back to her husband. But he can go back to his wife. It sounds unfair. But what can you do? That's the way how God created us. That one gives and the other one brings in. So just the same like Parnasa, like who works. Of course today both of them work, because that's what women want. But the truth is that basically only the husband has the responsibility of sustaining the family. He has to, it says so in the Ketubah, he has to sustain his wife. Why? Because he is a giver. You understand? She is a receiver, which means she doesn't have to go to work. Today they love to go to work. Okay, go to work. But you should know that he is the one in charge of work. He is the servant of the family. Who at the same time he is the head of the family, but he is the servant of the family. So that's the reason why bi'ah, the act, the sexual intercourse, in the old time was able, when there was more kedusha, more holiness in the spirit, they were able to make up a marriage just